I would say that HPCM is very applicable to the middle market, perhaps more applicable than it is to large corporates. Why? It's because if you're managing a middle market or even a smaller company, and you're an important lender to that company, an important banker to that company, you have access to the CEO and CFO of the corporate. If you're managing a large multinational, it's extremely difficult to get access at the most senior levels. And our course teaches us to move up the food chain, and you can't really move up the food chain unless you have that access to the seniors in the corporation. And that's why it's extremely applicable, and perhaps much more so than to the large corporates. Now, the issue you have with middle market is that the bankers tend to be managing a very large number of accounts. And so usually what does happen is you have the 80-20 rule, and you realize that of those 100 accounts, probably 20 of them at most are going to produce the bulk of your revenue, and will be doing something during the year which will be value added and can bring business to the bank. Which presents the challenge of what do you do with the other 80, and usually what happens is those accounts are pretty much in a maintenance mode and handled by more junior people. Now, you can miss an opportunity in one of those accounts every once in a while, so you have to keep an eye on that 80. You can't completely put them aside. But the reality is that when you have a large number like that, probably you can segment your marketing. I mean, he's right about service, because you have to serve all clients. But the question is, how much human capital are you going to put against a client who basically does very routine transactions on a daily basis? They have to be served. Do they have to be served by the same people? Do they have to be served with the same number of hours being put in? Do you have to put a plan against every account? My answer to that would be no, because there's only so many people that you can have on your staff. Account loads can be very, very heavy, and therefore you have to be very discerning about where you're going to put your time and your resources. Also, you have to look at the returns, because banks are famous for having a large number of clients that are not profitable. So where are the profits going to be? In high-performance client management, we analyze what is the bank doing with this client, what are they likely to do in the near future. Are they a client who actually does transactions, or are they a client that's basically very, very passive and routine? So the answer to that is yes, but in my opinion, you don't need to put the same level of resources against all 100 clients. It's much more than a sales course, because it's basically a planning and sales and origination course. I prefer to call it origination, because really sales implies copiers, cars, all sorts of things, insurance, and it's all very famous. We know quite well how we call the so-called used car salesman. It's somebody who has a product that he wants to sell you. He doesn't take the time, or she doesn't take the time, to understand what are your needs. And that's work. You have to sit down with the client and understand what is it the client actually needs. Sometimes the clients don't know exactly what they need. So you have to do a great deal of research on their financial statements. You have to read every footnote. You have to talk to the lowest level people in the company as well as the highest level to truly understand what the client needs. That's why high performance client management is divided pretty much into two segments. The first day, we spend a great deal of time putting together a plan based on data from the bank, returns, information we have on management, senior level calls. So we put a snapshot together on day one. What do we know about that client, and what do we know about our competition? The second day, we really practice sales skills. So we have people look at a live video of one of their own clients from the institution. Look at what that client's perception is of them and of the institution. and then practice those sales skills using that plan that they've prepared the prior day, and put theory into practice. I wouldn't basically try to segment it by revenues. I would kind of segment it by the number of products and services that the client does with the institution. If we know that the only service that client needs pretty much is wire transfers, letters of credit, they don't borrow money, they don't buy and sell companies, they don't engage in a variety of activities just by the nature of the company. That would be a client that would be very difficult to apply HPCM to, because they're pretty much what we call a product sale. And in fact, in the institutions I've worked with, those clients have been handled by the product teams, not by relationship managers, because that's really what they need. They only need foreign exchange from us. That's all they buy from anyone. So I would say, you know, if you try to segment it by revenue, it's rather difficult, because each country's market is quite different. I mean, a country like India, you know, you may have a very small company that's quite attractive in many other ways. You're looking at the whole of the client, not just one product or two products. It has to also, I mean, we also have an exercise in high performance client management where we have a matrix, and we plot our client on the matrix. And on one side of the matrix is, what is the likelihood this client will do a value-added transaction in the next year? On the other side is, what is the likelihood they will do that value-added transaction with our bank? And you see there are clients that are nowhere on the axis. They like the bank, but they don't do anything. Or they do lots of transactions, but they don't do them with us. So clearly that's the kind of client we want to focus on. One who does transactions, but they're not doing them with us. Oh, I think that by far, the most effective way to work is a team around the client, because no one individual has all the brilliant ideas. So when you bring in your derivative partner, you bring in your bond partner, you bring in your lending partner, and everyone sits around the table, which is what we do in the class. You brainstorm around that client, and often a product specialist is going to see something, an opportunity that the relationship manager doesn't see, and vice versa. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I think in the old days there was a great deal of friction, I would say would be the word, between relationship managers and product managers. But they've learned over the last 20 years that they really need each other. It's a symbiotic relationship. You will never have huge success with a client if you only spend your time on so-called relationship and not on product. And if you only look at your product all the time, you're going to miss other opportunities in other products. So you really have to bring everybody together around the table, and that's what we do in our class.